Next, we have to focus on other parts. So after the form validation, we have to create the user in the database for registration and hash the password also, because we cannot store the raw password in database because that is a security risk. So we have to hash our password always. Okay. And for the login also, when the form is valid, we have to fetch the user from the database, and if the password is correct, we have to log into the user and redirect to dashboard. So first create with the registration part. So we are done with the form part. For login functionality and for registering functionality, we have to use some authentication method. So we are going to use one library from Flask, that is the Flask-Login. So Flask-Login provides user session management. So it provides a session. So when we log in, it just create a session ID for a user, and with that ID, when we load the page, when we perform any action that requires login, so it can handle. The session handles all that thing. So it stores the active user ID in the Flask session. We don't need to create the manually session and all. It will automatically handle this thing. And then it provides some macro like the login required to restrict some of the views like the dashboard. So we will apply the login required for the dashboard. So normally the user cannot access the dashboard without login. Then yeah, it also helps, some security issues with, the protect the user session from being stolen by the cookie thieves. Cause it just, encode the session ID with the secret key that you added in configuration. Okay. And for installing this, you have to run this command pip install Flask-Login. So just run this, install Flask-Login, and okay, then start configuring our application. So you have to create an instance first to connect with the application. So from Flask-Login, import the login manager, then create the instance of login manager, and then connect the login manager with application. Okay, fine. We have connected our application with the login manager. Next, okay, so how it works, you will need to provide a user loader callback. So what will happen, it knows how to load the user, the login manager. So basically, uh, it will the it will store the user ID in the session. Okay, so when you log in, it creates a session ID that have the user ID, and when you reload or when you go after login, so it will just load the user by giving that user ID and then fetching the user from the user table. Okay, so this way it loads the user. So this I can put the root section, where from if we have to import the login manager, the instance that we have created, and login manager.user loader to load the user, okay, that is stored in the session after login. Okay, then we have to query user table user.query.get, and you have to also import user model. So from model, import the user to remove others. So from app.models, import the user, and while you loading the user from the session, use this query user.query.get, give the user ID, and it will load the user. Okay, save it. Then we have to work on model, our user model. So to work with Flask login, these methods are required with our model, and that we can apply with this mixin, the user mixin. So we have to provide this in user model. Okay. So how we will do that? Go to our models.py file and import the mixin. So from Flask login, import user mixin to supply some methods in user model. Okay. So after mixin, it will add some more methods to this class that those are provided by the Flask login. Okay, the needed one. You cannot work with the Flask login without those methods. Okay, those are needed. Like it will help to authenticate the user to check like the user is active or like active or not after the authentication. Okay, they have activated their account or not, and get ID. Okay, for loading the user. So we need that user mixin in our user model. Okay, then okay, we we have to do some modification on our user model too. Like we have to hash our password. Okay, that's why we have to modify this field. Okay, to password hash, and for doing that our database will be altered. So best way for now, delete the instance of the database and create the database again as once we're done with the modification. So we have to change this field to password hash, cause what will happen, what we are going to do, we will get the password from here, okay, from form object, compare it with the confirm, and if the password is correct at the first place, then we will create a password hash when we create the user. So we have updated one field here, the password hash, and then updating the field, just initiate the database again using the command flask -f run.py and the rcli command dbcreate that is listed here, dbcreate to initialize the database again. But we have altered the field and we cannot migrate. We will add some more library to migrate the database, so we don't need to delete the database, but for now just use this command. So after deleting database, we have initializing our database again, and we will have the latest field now in the user model. Why we have done this you will get to know after when we create our login function and the registration process. Now come to the root section for further changes. So we have to create the user in database. So for creating the user in database, we have to create the object first. And for creating the object, we have to add values in user object. So the first value will be the username that will come from the form.username.data. Okay. And the next is just format a bit. The next will be password. No, password we have to hash. So the next is full name. That will be the form.fullname.data. Then we have the qualification. That will be the form.qualification.data. And then the DOB, and the DOB will be form.dob.data. Okay. So we created the object. Now we have to hash our password. So for doing that, we have to use these methods from the Python module, or this is the Python library workgeo, and we will going to the security helpers, the generate password hash and the check password hash to check two password when we use the login functionality. Okay, so just import these methods in our model. So from workgeo dot security, from security we have to import what generate password hash and check password hash two module, and then we have to add two function here, def set password, okay, where we are going to give instance of the user object, okay, and the password from the form, okay, to create the hash. So now we will generate the password hash, okay, give the password supplied as from the form, and set in self dot password has this field. So what will happen? We have created the object, okay, we are going to provide this object or the object instance in this function. So when we will use with the user dot, when we will use user dot set password, so basically the self that we use here, it means that it is it is for it is on the instance, okay. So when we do the user dot set password, so the self is user object, okay, and then we will supply the password from the password, and in the self, in the same object, user object, we will set the generated hash in this field, password hash, okay. So this is the correct function. Now call it here. So it will be called on the instance, on the user instance, okay. So user dot set password, and we don't have to provide the user cause user is self, okay. For itself it is calling, on the instance it is calling, okay. So the self will be this, and then password. So password will be form dot password dot data, okay. So once this function will called on instance user, so it will generate the hash of the password and set that hash in this field, okay. Then we are done with the hashing password, okay. We are good here. Then after setting the password, now our object is completed, okay, with all the values. Now we can save this user's object in database. So how we do that? We do that using the db um, dot session dot add, and what we are going to add, which object? This object. So add the user and then save in database. So using the commit. Cool. So in that way we will store this object in our database, and then the flash message will be registration is successful, okay, successful. Cool. Then we'll redirect to the user to login, and we are done with the registration part. How cool. Okay, so as we are done with registration, why not check the well? this thing. Okay. Um, cool. So run the python.py run.py. Okay, and go to the registration and register a user. Okay, the password. Just give some size also on password so user cannot fill more value. I think 32 is enough. So come to the registration part and give a size to password also. Password size 32 and confirm password size 32. Okay, better. Reload it. User @email. Do that money@email.com. And the password is test pass. The confirmed password is test pass. Full name is money. Qualification I will not put. The date of birth, blah blah blah. I'm too young. I'm too young. I'm too young. Random value. I'm not that young. Okay. Cool. So submit it, and we should redirect to login page, and we will have our user record inside the user table. Okay, so submit it, and registration is successful. Okay, we can capture this record inside our Flask cell. Okay, we just made a record. Let's check it. So to check it, from app import db, and from app.models import user. Okay, then user will be user will be user dot query dot all. That will be users actually, and then the user will be users. And first we have only one record, then we have the user. So if we check the data, so our user has the values we have record created, okay, in the database. Cool. So we are done with the registration part. Okay, so we have hashed our password, we have created the user in database, we have redirect to login page. Okay, we have done all flow. Okay, so the next functionality is login, and form validation is also done for the login, and we have to go to next part, that is fetching the user from the database and checking the password is correct or not, and then redirect to dashboard. Okay, so while registering, if user has provided the password like 12345678, and we have stored the password as this type of string, like after generating the hash from the password. But what will happen when the user logins? They will give this password, and we have to compare this password with the user found, and for that user has. Okay, so how we'll do that? So we'll use the one more module is there from the security library that the check password has. So we generate using that, and then we have also check. So for that we have to create one password check password method, and where we have to also supply the instance of the user. So we have to fetch the user first, then we will use on that instance we have to use this method to check the password. So with the instance we have to give the password, and then we have to check using the check password hash. And what we have to check? So we have to check the self dot password hash by comparing it with password provided by the form. And whatever value return or true, we have to return it from here. Okay. So this will check both password, the instance password hash, and the password supplied from the form. And if they are true, it will return the true. If it is false, it will return the false. Okay. So we have created a method for checking the password. Now come to the login functionality again and start fetching the user first. So for fetching the user, we have to write a query user.query.filter by, and we have to filter the username. So we have to give the form.username.data value in username, and then all the users when we have to select the first one. Okay, so it will create an instance of the user by fetching the data from the database. Now if there is a user and the user is and if the user dot check password, okay, so we have to provide the password from form dot password dot data, and if it is true, then we have to log in user. So there is one more function from the Flask-Login, that is login user, this one. So if it is successful, we have to create a session. So for creating a session for the user, we have to use this method login user, and we will give the user detail here. Okay, so it will create the session in our server for this user. Okay, so once the session will be created, the session ID will be stored and sent at the user as cookie. And when user request any any routes, those require the login, they will send the cookie back to server where a Flask login will check by loading the user and check if the user has been authenticated or not. If it is, then it will process further. Otherwise, it will reject the request. Okay. So after logging the user, we will send the flash message login successful, and then we'll return it to dashboard URL. Else, in else, we will just provide a flash message with the value authentication failed, and the category will be error. Okay, cool. Now one more thing from the Flask login. So the login required, as we are redirecting user to dashboard after successful login only, so we have to make this route as login required. Okay, that will also import it from the Flask login. And when we make a route as login required, it cannot be accessible directly. Okay, like just a test. First remove the route and go to the dashboard, so you can access this one. Okay, but if I have modify it to work only if the login required, and then we go to dashboard, so it will say unauthorized. So you need a login to access this page. Okay. Okay. So we have fetched the user using the query. Then we have checked if the user is there and if the user uh, password is correct as per the stored password has. So we will log in the user, create a session and redirect user to dashboard. Okay. So the functionality is completed. Let's test it on browser. Okay. So run the server again and the user was money@email.com and the pass was just pass. Let's check it by submitting and we got the errors. Okay. Unsupported operand. What we have done wrong? What we have done wrong is okay, user and this way. Okay. So confirm and the login is successful. Okay. So login is successful and we have redirected to dashboard. So that this route is authenticated and so it is the private route basically. Only after login you can access this dashboard. Okay. Okay, so I guess we are pretty done with the functionality. One more thing we needed a logout function. Okay, to log out the user. So for doing that, we just need a GET request. So we have to create one more route app dot route that will be logout. Okay, and the logout is also required to have login first. If there's no login, no logout required. Okay, and then logout and how it will be handled. So for logging out, we have to use one more method that will clear or log out user from the Flask login. Okay, so just use this method and it will clear the session created for the user. Okay, and then we can send the user back to the login page. Not here, back to the login. Okay, login, and we can also flash a message. Yeah, we can flash a message. Logout successful. Okay, that will be a success type of message. Cool. Okay, and how we will log out? There is no navigation link we have added, so just add one more link in layout. Okay. Here. So one more link for logout and that will be logout. One more thing, you have seen that you are logged in successfully, but still you can see this login button. Okay, so right now it is not needed if you are already logged in. Okay, and similarly we have to show the logout uh, link only if the user logged in. So we can use the functions from the Flask login. So when you have a session created in the server, so you can use this proxy current user and with the current user it will load the user that has been authenticated on the browser, and with that you can use the method is authenticated um, that has been added to the user model by the user mixin. Okay, so just copy this part, okay, and add here. Okay. Mm, or do one thing, cut from here first. This is for okay, add inside the content first. And so if the current user is there and is authenticated, so use the current user dot full name, okay, on the dashboard page, and then add it here also, where if the current user is authenticated, we will show this one. Oh no, this one, the logout. Okay, else add a else block, else provide this block. Okay, guess we are done. Load the page and we can see our logout link now, and with a welcome message, hi money. Okay, so now we can log out. So just test this logout functionality. So click on the logout button and we will have to redirect back to login with a message logout successful. Okay, so we are done with the whole application, I guess. The whole flow, the user visits the registration page. So test the functionality again, whole functionality test it. Okay, so go to the home page. Okay, go to registration page and create a user, another user. Don't use the same user cause there will be error then, and that you have to handle because we haven't created yet. So use some other user. So money one at the rate test.com, and the password, then the password and name and date of birth. We can add the validation on date of birth, add it for now, something, anything, and then submit. So registration is successful. We are on the login page, and then we can use the user money at the test pass, submit the user, and login successful. We are in the user dashboard with the welcome message, and we can use the logout functionality, logout, and we are on the login page again, logout successful. Okay, now we are done with the changes. Okay, now we can check what we have just done. Okay, so come to the git part. So we have modified these files, we have created these files. Okay, so what we have modified, you can also check in VS Code from here. Okay, so you have changed what you have changed. You can compare the files what you have changed. So you have added the Flask-Login, you have you have created an instance for the login manager, then you have created a secret key and connect the app with the login manager. In the forms, you have created two forms, the login register form, login form, and it was newly created file. Then in the models, you have used the user mixin to add methods. Those are needed for the Flask login, like is authenticated, is active, get ID, something. And then you have created two methods, the set password, check password. You have also updated this field to store the password hashes. Okay, so with the set password, you are creating the password hash from the password of the from the form, and you are storing that password hash. And with the while the login, you are checking the password with the password by comparing the password hash and password. So you have two methods here. Then in the roots part, you have added a user loader function that will load the user from the session if the session has been created. Then you have created one root for the registration. You have created the form object. Then you have validated. If the validation is successful, you are creating a user object that then you are setting the password hash, and then you are storing that user in the database. And after successful registration, you are redirecting user to the login. Okay, then there is a login root you have added, and in that you have created the form object where you are getting the data from the form login form, and then you are validating the data. If validation is successful, you are querying the user, fetching the user data from the database and storing it in user instance, and then you checking the user, and if the user and you're checking the password. If the password is correct, then you are creating the session using the login user method and redirecting user to dashboard. The dashboard is protected root. You have created the dashboard also, that is the protected one, and you have created logout root that is also login required. Okay, then you have deleted this file. This is not needed. Then you have created a layout template. Okay, so you don't need to add HTML, the main HTML again and again. In the layout, you have added the block, then you have added a block for title, then you have added some styles for messages and list, error list. Then you have created a block for content, and then you have created messages, okay, and errors and navigation links. Okay, so if the user is authenticated, you can see the logout. If the user is not authenticated, you will see the login link, okay, to log in the user. And you are welcoming the user. Then you have created some child templates, the dashboard that is the require protected. So only after login you can see this template, this page. Then you have a home. You have modified the home as per the layout template. So you extend the layout templates and modified your home page. Then you have a login page. You have created the login. Inside login you have created the form, and inside the form you are creating the whole form using the form object from the forms.py, and also added the errors too. And similarly you have created the registration form. Okay, so this is the recap, and now we have done this much changes. Just push these changes to GitHub now. So git add. So git status is for checking all the changes that you have done. So you have modified files, you have deleted one files, you have added these files. Okay. So for adding all the changes, git add dot. So now if you check the status, the green, it means all the file has been staged to push. Okay. Then you name it git commit m, and that will be register and login functionality. Okay, you have staged and committed the changes. Then you have to push this so in remote origin into the main branch. Okay, so so you have pushed the changes. You can verify the changes by going to our GitHub, and GitHub, inside GitHub, Manindra and the Twitch master are repository, and check the commits. So the last commit is register and login functionality, and inside the commit you can check what are the changes you have done. So in the each file you can check only the changes that you have done. Okay, so these are changes you have done, the forms, models, what you have deleted, what you have added. Okay, see how beautiful is GitHub. Okay, roots and all. Cool. So we are done. Okay. So we are done with the authentication flow. So we have, you can also see the sequence diagrams. So this is just I have created for the to understand the flow. So user fills the registration form, submit the data, Flask validate the form data, then database create a new data user, then confirm the user creation, redirect back to login page. And for login also the user fills out the login form, submit the data, user Flask API validates the data, then it fetch the user by email, then return the user data, verify the password, and return to the dashboard. Okay. That's it for this video. You have created registration form, you have created a login form, and users can now able to register, they can log in, they can go to the dashboard after login, and they can log out also. In the next video, we will build the admin dashboard. See you next time.